One study found that 65% of fathers said they don't want to go back to work full time because their family benefited so much from having at least working some of the time from home.
And what would be some practical steps fathers could take to disciple their sons well, to connect with their sons, and I would assume daughters too, because the whole family together is what's going to lead to a really healthy expression of both genders. So what would be some just practical things for any fathers who might be listening to this today that they can take to reconnect with their sons and maybe just start instituting some practical steps to disciple them better in these areas?
Right, you can't write a book like this without giving some practical tips. Um, Even today, in surveys, men say that the main barrier to having close relationships with their children is work, just like it has been ever since the Industrial Revolution. And so I do have a whole chapter on ways in which we could flex the work structure to some degree for both parents so that parents can be more involved with their kids. And at this point, it's mostly anecdotal, but I have lots of anecdotes of people who found ways to work from home 2 days a week, for
Mm.
example, or some of them actually start home businesses or start consulting businesses. Um, some of them just leave work early. I have one student who would just leave work early 2 days a week to coach his son's basketball and soccer team. And his boss accused him of coasting, but he said it never actually hurt my career. And when my sons got
Wow.
older, they said, "We want to be a dad like you," which is a
Oh,
lot better than any workplace success. I
yeah.
have a story of another student. Sometimes it's easier to have concrete anecdotes. So during the pandemic has a very slight silver lining in that parents are saying, "Hey, I actually did get closer to my kids." Um, One study found that 65% of fathers said they don't want to go back to work full time because their family benefited so much from having at least working some of the time from home. And that statistic is in the book. Then there was another one that's come out more recently, so it's not in the book, but I love it. The New York Times had a headline that said, "During the pandemic, fathers got closer to their children, and they don't want to lose that."
Mm.
That the New York Times says this. Oh, wonderful. So one of my students, her husband is a IT worker, and he came home during the pandemic. And because he was home, he was able to be more involved in the homeschooling. He decided he would be the one to make lunch every day. He was able to drive the kids to their soccer practice. And he took on so much of the family responsibilities that his wife was freed up to start a part-time business. She's an opera singer. I had a student who was an opera singer,
Wow.
but I know, pretty cool. She started a voice studio, and so the whole family is benefiting from the added income. And I interviewed her husband, and he said, "Our family life is so much more balanced now. I am never
Mm.
going back to a cubicle." And the final kicker was, he said, "The time I used to spend commuting to work, I now spend praying every morning with my wife."
Wow. Wow.
So I just give anecdotes like that to try to encourage men to see if there's ways that they can flex their work schedule. And really, the pandemic helped. I quote some CEOs who said, "We never wanted to experiment with home-based work before because we were afraid people would just slough off. They would be slouches." And he
Yeah.
said the pandemic completely exploded that. We did not lose any productivity. And in fact, if anything, they work more when they're home because they're no
Wow.
longer wasting time with the commute. They're no longer having to waste time, with special work clothes and so on. He said, if anything, we have to tell them to stop. They tend to, I don't know if you've ever worked from home, but yes, you tend to keep going.
Yeah.
Um, People I
That's
interviewed who work from home said, my biggest problem was knowing when to stop. So they did not lose any productivity. And so it actually is better, even for the workplace. We have to sell it to the workplace that it's not only good for the family, which it is, but it's also good for the workplace. That
yeah.
people who have good family relationships are better employers and are
Yeah.
better employees.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned that that was one of the silver linings of the pandemic. I think also a silver lining was opening up people's minds to the possibility of homeschool, because that certainly was the case in our family, which has led us to being closer as a family. And I didn't see this coming, but my husband almost all by himself homeschooled our son. Whereas my daughter worked a little bit more independently, and I would work with her on a few things here and there. He just kind of took the reins of my son's homeschool, and that has brought them closer together, and it's just been so great for our family. So I think there were some silver linings there with people, and also there's silver linings to all of the social media and the internet that we have, although there's a lot of bad stuff on there. It also has opened up people's minds, I think, to alternative ways of working and even business opportunities that wouldn't exist without an online space or something like that. So I love that. That's so practical because that's something all of us can be thinking through as far as how to get more of that family time.